sword and scribe.
When speaking to Scribe Haylen at the Cambridge police station, she will issue you a Qaurtermaster Op, in which she needs found either one of 3 pieces of important tech. After uploading to you the coordinates of where you can find this tech out in the Commonwealth Wasteland, you then proceed to go and find her this valuable tech. Scribe Haylen informs you as well that these tech devices are not just important to her and her team, but they are also important to the Brotherhood as well. These pieces include the Flux Sensor, the Haptic Drive, and the Reflex Capacitor. Now, most of you who accept this quest are just wanting to score some quick and easy caps, so you will then run out, fetch the tech item, bring it back to Scribe Haylen, give her the tech item, receive payment, and be on your merry little way. But, if you are like me, then maybe you've wondered, hey, are these things real? Or just some sci-fi techno crap that Bethesda made up for the game? Do these tech items contain any real-world engineering or scientific principles? And do they have any real-world functionality? In this episode, I hope to explore these questions and hopefully make sense of any of the material. Of these 3, the first that we are going to investigate is the Flux Sensor. Now, when analyzing the design of the Flux Sensor, we can see that it matches the same design as a device known as the sensor module. There is, though, a difference between the two, as the Flux Sensor has on the backside of the device a metal plate. Now, when it comes to design, there is significance to the metallic plate that is bolted to the back of the Flux Sensor. But in order to get into the specifications of this, we need to first answer a couple of questions. The first of these questions to explore is the Flux Sensor. Is this a real piece of tech? And to answer that question, and the answer to that is yes, or at least I believe it is. See, in our own world, there is a piece of technology that we call a heat flux sensor. So let's dive into the specifications of this device. A heat flux sensor is a type of transducer that translates a total net of registered thermal heat, which has been absorbed by the surface plate of the sensor, into an electrical signal impulse. This impulse then travels through connected copper wiring to a thermocouple in order to gauge the thermal resistance and total heat flux of the surface the flux sensor is attached to. In essence, a flux sensor will indicate changes in baseline environmental temperature stasis, indicating if the internal environment is getting hotter or getting colder. It is commonly used to indicate if an environment is reducing external heat on an internal environment. In our world, heat flux sensors are used in construction, such as in certain types of window installation, allowing one to know if the SPF rating of the glass is doing its job. But it is not limited to this. There are many different types of heat flux sensors. Each of these can register other forms of radiating energy, such as solar radiation or electromagnetic radiation, as well as plasma energies. I think you see where this is going. Now, in our world, there are different types of heat flux sensors. There is the Gordon gauge, also known as the circular foil gauge, a pyrometer, and a thermopile. Each of these differ in their design. A Gordon gauge is primarily used to measure high-density radiation. The most common use is for exposure testing of sample materials for their resistance to fire and flame. A pyranometer is an actinometer used for measuring solar irradiance on planar surfaces within a certain wavelength. This is used when reading solar energy from solar panels. And finally, there is the thermopile, which converts thermal energy into electrical energy, which its design uses thermocouples connected in series. Now, these are all used in tandem and can be interchangeable depending on what you want your outcome reading to be. But let us now transition and discuss the technical properties of a flux sensor as it is known in our own world. The flux sensor measures local heat flux density in one direction. This is usually measured in wattage and is represented by an R value. Now, according to this diagram, heat radiating from a source will flow through the flat rear side of the sensor, called the hot side, passing through the heat flux sensor itself. The sensor is comprised of 2 components, a constantin, which is the positive side of the sensor, and then onto a bent stacked copper wire, which is the negative side of the sensor. As heat passes through, it will be absorbed and translated from the constant end of the copper wiring, which then relays this impulse through further wiring, producing an up signal and down signal effect, following away from the source of the heat. There are two variables that depend on how fast this process is read and translated through the flux sensor, and that is surface area and time. In order for one of these devices to detect radiation, one must apply a heat sink added to the reading surface, using a conducive metal, a filter, and thermal coating. Normally this process is slow, but can become more responsive using different materials and adjusting the surface areas. All in all, a flux sensor's processing time is slow, but can become more responsive by changing out and altering materials used as your surface plating or adjusting total surface area in general. From this information, we can gather that the heat flux sensor of our world must be what the flux sensor is in the Fallout universe. Though, if we assess this schematic here, then I believe it is safe to assume that the in-game flux sensor lines up pretty well with the real-world thermopile heat flux sensor. And my reasoning for which I have circled on the in-game model and drawn arrows to the real-world model, linking the two, and why I think it's a pretty good match. But what we cannot assume is, of all the different designs and types of heat flux sensors we have in our universe, we have no idea which one in the Fallout universe the flux sensor is based on. And by that I mean by design and what type of energy is being registered or read, or even converted. What we can do is dive in and see what type of applications the Brotherhood would gain most from obtaining this type of tech. Being that a flux sensor is a primary thermal and radiation detection device, the applications are numerous. Though we use these devices for indoor temperature control and construction projects, there are other uses in the real world that strengthen the importance of this device within an irradiated wasteland. Being able to detect, adjust, and retain thermal energy is something that the Brotherhood would find very critical for their, airship, the Pridwin, but even more importantly, the numerous suits of power armor that knights, paladins, and sentinels don every day. Unlike our own world, there are different types of projectiles other than just physical bullets. You have thermal, electromagnetic, laser, plasma, and radiation projectile weapons that are an everyday threat for everyone. The ability to sense these incoming projectiles hitting your armor would be helpful to those operators which are dependent on their power suit for protection. A flux sensor would register the damage, send a signal to the visor inlay screen that you are taking said damage, and hopefully force you to take shelter or speed up the counter-murdering process. The same sensor could also help with detecting outside thermal readings, which would help notify you that the outside environment is dangerously hot or dangerously cold. Now, anyone that has played Fallout knows of a Geiger counter, and the suit does show that in-game. But there are other environmental dangers affiliated with places, such as the glowing sea, which produces electromagnetic storms, in which these devices would help inform the power armor operator to be aware of. The other application, of course, is the retention of thermal energy. An operator inside the suit needs to maintain normal body temp regulation. And just like keeping your house set to 70, or 81 if you're my wife, it is imperative that this environment is maintained. A flux sensor would ensure this, allowing for readings internally if there is vast spikes in temp readings, so that the pilot would know to get back to home base quickly and have a mechanic fix the temp leak. Besides power armor, a more simplistic use for scribes would be to use flux sensors to sense and identify thermal sources of energy within buildings and other sites of exploration. If a building is hiding a source of severe temperature fluctuating material, this would help identify this and allow for them to make the choice to either proceed with investigating building or leaving. Now, thermopiles are used to generate electrical energy from heat derived from electrical components, radioactive materials, laser radiation, and even combustion. So in essence, with proper application, a thermopile would be a major upgrade to any power armor suit that wants to convert damage into power. Now we see this in-game in Fallout 76. such as the legendary perk card called Electric Absorption, which states that you have a percentage chance of converting an enemy's energy attack into power for your power armor's fusion core, which I highly recommend if you're fighting lots of robots. Taking the knowledge gained here and coupling it with the 76 perk card, we can actually gain some cool insight into how the two might be connected in the in-game world universe. If the perk card is believed as a reality and not just an in-game mechanic, then Scribe Haylen is definitely correct in her proclamation that these tech devices are important. Having a thermopile flux sensor installed would allow for translational energy relay from an enemy's weapon directly into your power armor's fusion core battery, while also mitigating the amount of damage received by the knight or the paladin. So, attacking the Brotherhood with energy weapons would just be a whole bunch of not fun. Now, there are some downsides, as this technology is dependent on surface area, and the T60 power armor suit appears to be a lot of surface area, to say the least. But if we can make a 30-foot robot walk and eat atom bombs at our foes, then I'm sure that wouldn't really be a problem. Though the data on thermopile flux sensors also states that even combustible energy can be converted into power, but yet explosives always end your day. Which is, not at all frustrating. Just not frustrating at all. You're on patrol with your boys, you got your T60 power armor, you're feeling strong and big on top of the world, and then some guy just shows up. Maybe it's some raiders, maybe it's some super mutants, and they've got rocket launchers or grenades, or maybe even a mini nuke, and then you're done. You're done. Your boys are done. Your team's done. You're just done. And it's fine. It's totally fine. Or, heaven forbid, you find yourself in the, Appalachian region of the country, and you're firing off some 40mm shells, and, you fire off so many of them that you die, the enemies die, everyone dies, and then the world crashes, and you don't even get to play anymore. But, that's also totally cool. But, anyway, I digress. If you're watching this and you are a fan of Fallout 76, I'm just teasing. It's a great game. I play it all the time. I love it. If you are watching this and you despise Fallout 76 and you're more of I only play the main titles in the series kind of person, then I actually also agree with you. Fallout 76 is pretty bad because of the crashing. But, just playing both sides of the field there. So go ahead and feel free to either agree with me or agree with me in the comments. Anyway, back to why we're here. We especially see this in the new Fallout Amazon show. During the siege of the observatory by the Brotherhood, NCR troops can be seen just insta-killing knights in T60 power armor with the use of explosives. Yet, the NCR stragglers don't appear to be using laser weapons. So who knows what's going on with power armor reflective properties. I actually do have a whole bunch of opinions on the matter in regards to power armor and the like, but that is for a different video at another time. With that, we will conclude this dive into heat flux sensors and the in-game flux sensors, how they work, and some possible uses within the Fallout world. Be sure to like, comment, share, all that kind of jazz. If you enjoyed the production, dislike if you didn't. As I have stated tonight, Castillas, I will be doing the tech series, so if you enjoyed this segment, also please let us know. I have many more planned, so your input would be very much liked and appreciated. Anyway, if you have any further insight, want to add another use, or have another idea, or just want to inform me that I got something wrong, let me know in the terminal net box below. Thank you for joining me. This is Paladin Lamrick,